introduce each member of the board who are present today, beginning with the two ad hoc members, Mr. Gregory Gain and Mr. Carl Kelling, who are attending this meeting in the department's Buffalo office. And of course, I want to thank them for their continued service to the board in this matter. And then representing the permanent members of the Siting Board, we've got Lou Alexander, alternate of Basil Sagos of the Department of Environmental Conservation. We've got Kevin Malone, alternate of Dr. Howard Zucker, Department of Health. We have Vincent Ravshear, alternate of Howard Zemsky, Empire State Development Corporation. We have John Williams, alternate of Richard Kaufman, New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Secretary Burgess, are there any changes to the agenda?
Good morning. There are no changes to this morning's agenda.
With that, let's proceed to the item. Case 14F0490 is the petition for rehearing filed by concerned citizens of the Cassadaga Wind Project regarding Cassadaga Wind LLC's Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need pursuant to Article 10 to construct a wind energy project. This item will be presented by Dakin Lee Cakes, Administrative Law Judge, Department of Public Service. Paul Agresta, General Counsel, Department of Public Service, and Mike Warden, Director, Office of Electric, Gas, and Water, Department of Public Service, are available for questions. Judge LeCakes, please begin.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman Rhodes and members of the Siting Board. When we were here in January, Administrative Law Judge from the Department of Environmental Conservation, Judge Nick Garlick, and myself presented to the Siting Board our evaluation and recommendations regarding an application filed by Cassadaga Wind LLC under Article 10 of the New York State Public Service Law. At that meeting, the Siting Board voted to issue a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need to Cassadaga Wind, authorizing it to construct a major electric generating facility consisting of up to 48 wind turbines in Chautauqua County, New York. That authorization was provided through a written order issued on January 17th. The order included 161 certificate conditions applicable to the project's construction and operation. Cassadaga Wind submitted its formal acceptance of the certificate and conditions on February 15th. On February 20th, concerned citizens for the Cassadaga Wind Project filed a petition for rehearing on certain limited points in the certificate conditions. First, concerned citizens took issue with Condition 32, which requires Cassadaga Wind to prepare and file a final bird and bat conservation strategy plan in consultation with the Department of Public Service, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. Concerned citizens requested that the condition be modified to include language identical to Condition 33, which would allow for participation in those consultations by any party to this matter. Second, concerned citizens complains that the certificate conditions do not properly avoid or minimize the impacts of fluctuating project noise. Concerned citizens raises a couple of issues with regard to both the applicant's pre-construction modeling and its monitoring protocols during project operation. Concerned citizens believes that the applicable sound limits in the conditions do not account for maximum sound levels, that the conditions rely too much on operational monitoring rather than pre-construction modeling, and that the operational modeling relies too much on residential complaints. Finally, concerned citizens request that the board require Cassadaga Wind to submit information on noise reduction operations based on the noise modeling results in Cassadaga Wind's application. Cassadaga Wind objected to the petition being filed one day late and to the fact that concerned citizens did not take exception to some of the conditions that it now seeks to modify. Cassadaga Wind also addressed the merits of each of concerned citizens' objections. Prior to this meeting, you were provided with a draft order. The draft order before you contains the recommendations of advisory staff on this matter. It would excuse the rehearing petition as being one day late as an exercise of board discretion, particularly on this first Article 10 certificate granted, but cautions that such discretion is exercised here, particular to the circumstances of this case. As for the bird and bat conservation strategy plan, the order agrees with Cassadaga Wind that concerned citizens' failure to take exception to the same language that was included in the recommended decision precludes it from requesting relief. But the order then explains that concerned citizens was not intended to be precluded from those discussions and consultations. And so the draft order modifies on the board's own motion the language of the condition to include all parties in this case in those discussions in order to clarify the board's original intent for that certificate condition. As for the noise issues, the draft order explains that the board did consider concerned citizens' arguments and that nothing new was raised in its rehearing petition, finding that the January order and certificate conditions appropriately account for maximum noise values, that it also accounts for the effects of wind shear and amplitude modulation, and that it achieves a proper balance between the requirements on pre-construction noise modeling and post-construction or operational noise monitoring. The January order also balances or achieves a proper balance between requiring that the certificate holder perform regular noise testing and in response to residential complaints that might be filed with the certificate holder or the Public Service Commission. Finally, as for the noise reduction operations, the draft order is clear that such protocols are required where the modeling demonstrates that they are necessary. Lastly, the order also explains the role of the parties and Department of Public Service staff in the compliance filing process, noting that they will have the opportunity to comment on any filings made by the certificate holder during its compliance filing process. With that, I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Judge Lepeaks. My own comments are brief. First, I simply welcome the fact of this rehearing. I think it demonstrates that our process can work as it should, and shows that our consideration of these matters is serious and transparent. I'm pleased that the concerned citizens played the role that they played in speaking up on these matters and raising their points. I thank you for your work in developing the draft order, and I will support the recommendation. So, are there any comments or questions from my fellow board members?
Can I just remind everyone to please speak into the microphone a little bit closer, please? Yeah, you speak a little closer into the microphone, please.
All right, thank you. Are there any comments or questions from my fellow board members? Hearing and seeing none, let's proceed to a call for a vote. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to deny the petition of concerned citizens of the Cassadaga Wind Project on the merits and to correct certificate condition 32 as described. Mr. Alexander, how do you vote?
My vote is also in favor.
Mr. Gain, how do you vote?
I'm in favor.
Mr. Kelling, how do you vote?
I'm in favor of the board's recommendation.
Mr. Malone, how do you vote?
My vote is in favor.
Mr. Ravashir, how do you vote?
In favor.
Mr. Williams, how do you vote?
In favor.
The matter is approved and the recommendation is adopted. Secretary Burgess, is there anything further to come before us today?
There's nothing further to come before the board today.
With that, let us adjourn. Thank you.